Hello everyone and welcome to the Talking Stick Show. So I have a special two guests with me this morning. So Andrea and Craig, hello.
Hi.
How are you both doing? So we'll start, because it's going to be a bit, who's going to speak? We'll start with Andrea. How are you doing this morning?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. I've just had 3 weeks off, so first day back teaching this morning. So yeah, really good.
Beautiful, beautiful. And how are you doing, Craig?
Yeah, the same really. Doing well. There's been lots of evolution going on with ideas and concepts, and plus getting back to doing some live sessions now, just slowly getting back, but it's good to be back and sharing Beautiful. What I do again in a live environment.
Yeah, I was just speaking about this with both of you. I had a ceremony yesterday and it was just so different because I'm so used to Zoom and I'm hiding behind a computer, or I'm doing my sessions behind a computer, but then you've got the interaction where you're dealing with other people's energy and you have to kind of hold your space, be protected as well, so you don't get overwhelmed with what's going on. So Craig, so what's it been like for you going into that process of coming back to the normal way of meeting people and doing sessions face to face?
Yeah, the good thing is that I'd had quite a few years of hosting the sessions before we went into lockdown, so it's been nice to go back. But just one thing that I've become aware of, that because I've been doing it for a number of years, I've fallen into a routine, if you like, of probably in my comfort zone a little bit, of like the intro chat. If people had come to a lot of sessions, they probably knew what the intro chat was going to be, and
yeah. So
I've allowed that to not be as structured this time.
Beautiful.
So, but and there's still a bit. The atmosphere is not quite the same because of all the controls that are in place at the moment.
That's it, and we're kind of limited a little bit, aren't we, in our life and what we can do, and even people coming, or how many people can come. Andrea, so what's it been like for you coming back into a space? So you've just come back from Glastonbury, haven't you? Can you just explain what you're doing over there?
Yeah, so we normally would be running our Radiant Woman retreat, or my Radiant Woman retreat. Craig supports me in that. So we actually went on our own. So we just went to connect there. We've just literally got back from, it was quite a last minute retreat that we arranged only like in the last few months, which was called Oh My Goddess Weekend Retreat. So we've had 40 women together, and that was the first time that I've been back doing live, anything live. So we've been camping. We were actually doing, it was actually had a theme in that we were working with the witch wound and the sister wound.
Okay. It's
been quite a powerful weekend. I've never held that space for that amount of people before either, but it's been absolutely great. We've absolutely loved it. And I think it's made me realise that I've loved working on Zoom and been behind the camera. I've really enjoyed it. But after having the weekend with such lovely women in that environment, how important it is that we have human contact. It's, you know, everybody has said, in fact, even this morning, like a week later, everyone's saying we're still buzzing from having, you know, that social contact. I think it is it's quite important for us as human beings that we have that physical connection with people.
Definitely, and it's getting the it's kind of the social skill muscle going again, isn't it, when you go out there and actually understanding it's so important to speak to people, because that interaction, it grows us, doesn't it, as people, and it makes our awareness and ourself kind of go into new heights. For me, I had a ceremony, I spoke about this before, with a few of my friends after the lockdown, and no one knew what to say for the first half an hour. It was like, should I ask how you are? like it was such a profound, weird going on, until we started clearing the space. We started talking again, explaining, and it's like getting the socializing skills back and understanding how important they are.
Yeah.
And how has that been for you then, Craig? So what from your perspective, what's it like going through that, and why is it important to socialize from your perspective?
I think just everything that you've just said there, that human connection.
Yeah.
important, and it's one thing I haven't done much work online mainly because of that reason. I think that for me, my sessions have always been about that human connection.
Yeah.
So doing it via Zoom, I know you get a certain amount of connection, but for me it just wasn't the same, and I had a massive resistance to taking things online. Okay. So I recorded a few sessions which have gone up on YouTube, and did a couple of sessions with things that were pre-planned that didn't go ahead.
Okay.
Did some online sessions, but apart from that, I had a big resistance going online. I think, like I say, a lot of it was around that human connection. It's really important for me to have that live environment.
Yeah.
That physical connection.
It's great to see you both doing well in what you're doing and kind of expanding on your own journeys. And kind of why I wanted to have this conversation today was to talk about relationships. And it's great that both of you are doing different things, but it's about understanding and co-creating together and finding balance, so on and so forth. So we'll just start with Andrea. Let's talk a little bit about relationships from your perspective and why it's important to give each other space and forgiveness, so on and so forth. And we'll slowly unravel and go into it.
Yeah, so, well, I suppose in our relationship, I guess because we were older when we got together, both had different relationships, but similar relationships, I guess. But that we'd both, I guess, learned a lot before we entered into this relationship. So my relationship with my work when we met was paramount to me, because I've been on my own for a while. My work is my life, and that was kind of an understanding, wasn't it, that we had, that that would, you know, be at the forefront. It was so lovely to meet somebody who was like-minded, and that has really helped, because I think through my relationships that I've had, because I've been on a spiritual journey, I have outgrown, or, you know, we've outgrown things that would have been acceptable then became no longer acceptable. And I suppose as I expanded and grew into you know, what I was becoming, that didn't sit within the relationship anymore. So when I started kind of looking for a new relationship, I was looking with different eyes. So I was looking for somebody who was open to everything that I did and everything that I was, and wouldn't try and close that down, because often I'd found men would try and close that down. So when I met Craig, I could see in him that this was somebody who would expand and grow with me, that had similar values, and so what I feel now is that I'm in a very healthy relationship, whereby we can share. If we have an emotional episode, we call it.
We all do. We are human. We are human.
It's okay to have that emotional episode, and then say, I think you still, sometimes I pick it up before Craig is ready to share it.
What tends to happen is I go quiet, and Andrea will say, oh, do we need to have a chat? And sometimes I'll go, no, because I'm still processing. I'm one of those people, I've got to get it straight in my head before I can talk about it.
Yeah.
Whereas Andrea is a bit more of, let's just put it on the table and deal with it.
Yeah.
So again, we've got very different approaches, but there's that phrase of, you know, I tend to go quiet. So is everything okay? You're very quiet. And I'll maybe go, no, I'm fine, just processing all. And Andrea's will allow me that space to do that, but knowing that sometime, whether it's a few hours or the next day, we'll have a conversation around it. Yeah.
So that's great, that the processing coming into you, Craig, about you processing the situation and not making a rash decision of, because sometimes we go into polarity, and sometimes we do need a bit of time to kind of look back at something what's happened. So say if drama's unfolded with someone who's been very rude to you, or something's happened to you, sometimes we can jump and we can start saying there and then sometimes, or we can look back and assess the situation, have a few hours just to process it, then really feel why you went into that feeling, so on and so forth. So it's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? Like sometimes it's good, you have to speak about it, but then it's the way in you speaking, or are you kind of over going into it?
Yeah. Well, we're usually quite.
I think, but because
we're getting better.
I think it's always a work in progress.
Because I think you have all of your stuff as well, and I can get triggered quite easily in a way. My star sign is Taurus, but my moon sign is Leo, which is a fire sign. So my moon, or my emotional energy, is quite fire. So you're air, aren't you?
Yeah,
so
I've got Gemini in both, so I'm very airy, so that overthinking and having to process.
Yeah.
So sometimes I have to think before I can explain what it is, or else sometimes I'll say, yeah, there's something going on, but I don't know what it is yet.
Yeah.
And I've got to sit with it myself until that's what it is, and then I can talk about it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I go in and I can't really put words to what it is.
Yeah, and that's it. A lot of people find it hard in relationships because they have to deal with themselves. So many people don't have girlfriends or don't have partners because every single partner they have, they find out stuff about themselves, or they can't come to terms with parts of themselves. So relationships are here for us to expand and learn about each other in the process. And forgiveness, why is forgiveness important in relationships?
Well, I think that there's always that space. There always has to be that space for, like, well, I kind of like to think about it like acceptance, really, that we are really different. And, you know, we always apologise, don't we? If we've said anything, or if anything's happened, or we do tend to there's always that apology. You know, sorry if this, and I think that is really important, that we really honour the other person, that like how I respond is so different, isn't it? Like I can get quite angry and quite fiery.
Yeah.
Craig will pick up on that, won't you? He sort of backs up because of his past, you know, that it will trigger something for him. So, you know, I think there is that. I think often the apology and the forgiveness allows space for the person to be who they are as well. That you know, I'm sorry I react like that, but that is how I react. That is how I am.
Yeah.
We had a conversation about these kind of inner traits that are in us, that are deep within us, and sometimes, you know, as much as we try and unearth them and heal them, sometimes they will just happen before you've even had that, because the survival, so a lot of them is about survival. So I think often having that moment of apology or forgiveness or whatever, and just holding that person in love and acceptance that that's how they are because of this, or that it kind of just, I don't know, it just opens up the space to be okay without it being wrong, you know, without it being wrong.
I think coming back to when it's a new relationship, it's partly about finding those things out and having those conversations, and it doesn't happen overnight. You start to build an awareness of the other person and how they are, and like I said, just acknowledging that thing about like the apology, or just acknowledging. So I don't think we've been quite fortunate, and I think probably because, going back to what Andrea said, when I was looking for a relationship, I did the thing of writing out a list of the qualities that I wanted in the person. And it wasn't anything about how they looked, or you know, it wasn't a physical thing. It was more about personality traits and where they were in their life and what they wanted for the future. And so I was looking for those sort of matches rather than physical appearance or anything like that. And I don't know where I was going with this. Where did we start off?
So we're going then.
So then I think that helped in that we've never really come to a place where there's had to be real forgiveness, if you like. We've always managed situations really well from the offset. So I think we've been really fortunate in that respect, but it may have been the process that we were both quite selective in. The next partner we had to be sort of the right person, right type of person.
Not at all, because we were actually both in really good places where we were both really independent and happy to be on our own. So I think that is a different way, it's a different place to be, because you're not needy of the other person, you're not, you know, and I think that that's something that I learned. I've learned very much through this relationship, you know, particularly, is that we are together but we're both independent as well, aren't we? We both have our own interests and we have interests together, and we're both individual and together. So, and I think that is a really healthy way to be. You're not giving everything of yourself in a needy way in any way. And I think that also, because I think there's a thing in relationship about insecurity, and I think that's often where things can start to go a little bit, because sometimes a little bit wrong, where there's that insecurity. But I think if you're in a good place yourself, you've done the work yourself, and you're quite confident in who you are, then that insecurity maybe is not quite so much, is it? Maybe.
And I think that's the thing, is like that time, I had 18 months, 2 years in a flat by myself, and so that time to space and really think about what it is that you want and for the future, and like you say, it was either the right person or nobody. That was the thing. So that's the you know, the mindset you go in.
So what's your view on codependency then, Craig? What's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I think it's something we can fall into. I know from looking at my own past, there was a relationship there with my ex, but it had actually started when I was a child, and that the role I had as a child I took into adulthood, and that's partly how I ended up with a partner I did. So when I was younger, both my father and my brother got quite fiery personalities. So I'd always be the one sort of peacemaker and not upset the apple cart and sort of step back. So I sort of did the opposite to my brother. I sort of closed down and he sort of went the opposite way and was quite fiery. I had that role within me, and I took that into my adult relationship, if you like.
Okay.
So I think that the patterns sometimes, like codependency and that type of thing, that the patterns can be set up in childhood. And if you're not consciously aware of that, you take those into adulthood and play them out. And maybe even subconsciously you look for a partner that allows you to be that person. Yeah. So I think it's all around awareness.
Yeah. And that reminds me of my first relationship. I've only had 2 relationships in my life. My second one, I was married. There was that space where you'd leave them and there's like a codependent kind of, I can't be without you. And you kind of like, then that kind of triggers something inside yourself to be like, all right, that someone's codependent on me. And it's like a never ending cycle. So Andrea, what's your view on the codependency? Then you started talking about it before. Deeper.
Yeah, well, I think we had the conversation last time, didn't we, about things being familiar. You know, I guess my journey with codependency was really down to my relationship with my dad, and I looked for something that was familiar, that felt familiar. So the relationships I had were quite, abusive. You know, quite aggressive. There were quite volatile relationships, and that was kind of, I suppose, in a way, well, I learned eventually that what it was my dad was quite narcissistic, so we didn't have that love, was never shared, and still isn't really, even now. So I always looked for men that would reject me, because that's what I knew, that's what I always had known. And I suppose it wasn't until I remember sitting in the car one day after, I don't know, a row or whatever, thinking, where am I rejecting myself? And in that moment, I realised that it was about me. It wasn't about them. It was about the parts I was rejecting in myself. So that felt like a healing in a moment, that when I start loving myself and really accepting myself for who I am, then what is possible. And then I met and then I met Craig. So I then started to look for somebody I felt I deserved, which was a very different thing, because that was somebody who had a similar qualities to me, similar outlook to me. And then in vibrational terms, because I was then by that point looking at vibration, somebody who vibrates at a similar level to me. So when we met, because like the first time we met, we were like 3.5 hours, weren't we, just chatting, like, and the time just disappeared, didn't it? Yeah. And I think we both went away. I, you know, said to Craig, like, Craig was not my usual type, the type that I would go for. And I rang my best friend and I went, well, I think he's lovely and we got on really well, but he's not my type. And she said, good, go out again. And so, like, the rest is history, really. She was like, yeah, this is a good thing. This is a good thing. I mean, we've had our ups and downs. I mean, you know, it hasn't been easy because, I mean, you know, my year after we'd met, and so there was a lot of stuff went on. There was a lot of, you know, stuff going on with the kids. Yeah. There's been, you know, obviously we've got 4 kids between us, all similar ages, at similar stages as well, haven't they been? And I mean, Craig's been great with, you know, my kids, haven't you? And, you know,
same.
Yeah, so we've both like really supported each other's kids at different points, and you know, I think we're a really good team like that, aren't we, with the kids? Like, nothing, like, Craig's so chilled out, like, you don't really get, occasionally you do, don't you? But you don't really get, like, worried about anything particularly. And, like, I'll get quite, you know, I can get quite emotional, especially with around the kids. And Craig, really, you always really help me sort of not worry, don't you? It's great. It's such a good support for me. And, you know, I've always said I wouldn't be where I am now if it hadn't been for meeting Craig, because he's totally held a space for me to grow and evolve and change. And it's never been a threat to you, has it, really? No. Or maybe it has, I don't know.
No, it hasn't. And I think the opposite's true as well, that because I am so chilled that sometimes there's that thing that not putting yourself out there fully. And we have very different approaches. Andrea's very much have an idea, put it out there, see what happens, and then if something comes of it, sort of build on it. Whereas I think we've been talking the pre-chat, we were saying that very much have to have everything structured and in place and know exactly what I'm doing before I can make that first step. So I've got lots of stuff planned that's sort of 80, 90, 95% ready, but I still haven't quite put it out there.
Okay.
So I think Andrea's helped me in that way to think that don't be so precious around the perfectionism mindset, and everything's got to be right, and I've got to look professional, and I've got to look like I know what I'm doing, and so it's been very much supporting just being yourself, putting yourself out there, and letting things take their own course. So again, very different approaches balance each other out really well.
Yeah, and that kind of corresponds with what you were saying about structure, like relationships correspond with that, not trying to be too structured in everything you do, and if something doesn't happen the way you want it to do, is just going with it. And kind of we were talking about as well, like even like doing shows or doing ceremonies or whatever you're doing, holding the space sound therapy wise, sometimes it is good to kind of just release the strains, isn't it, and kind of just go with the flow of the universe and kind of go into that space.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a lot in, you know, that well, for me anyway, I think around supporting each other in their journey, wherever that's leading, because you know, if we're living in the flow, you know, often our journey might be taking us in a way that, you know, like you have pulled me back a couple of times, haven't you, about, oh, I'm going this way, and Craig might go, oh, well, it's been more with people really, hasn't it? Sometimes people have come in and I've been like, oh yeah, this person's great, and Craig will maybe go, oh, just maybe, you know, hold fire a little bit on that one, or so we observe for each other as well. I think
it's not that thing of don't do that, it's just that be cautious.
Observation and who you're letting into your space. I had a dealing with some client never going to mention names, but in the past where there's been like levels of boundaries and stuff like that, and you have to be discerning all the time, even with new people and meeting new people, about how they are towards you and if the relationship is healthy or is it toxic. It's like separating the density in your life and understanding that even in relationships, who you both hang around with, you hang around with couples, is hang around with people who actually want you to be happy, not kind of an agendas out there for kind of to push you apart, because there are things out there which do happen like that, and it's about us being aware and just being real, isn't it, and just being discerning.
Yeah, and we have a really good, like, well, because it's like working together as well. I mean, my friend the other day, because we at the retreat this weekend, Craig did a sound bath, and then I did a little bit within it. And my friend was saying it was really lovely to watch you both working together, because we do intuit quite well, don't we, where each other is, and that's just come through time, I think, of knowing each other better and sort of growing together, I suppose, aren't we? And
I mean, when we first started to work together, because we've got very different approaches, that was the time when we got quirky with each other. That's another word we use.
Quirky. Are you getting quirky?
Because we've, very different approaches. There was something I was preparing for, an event I was doing, and I remember it was sort of a Sunday, and it was about 8 o'clock at night, and I sort of said, but I need to do this for tomorrow now. And Andrea said, I can't believe you've left that till 8 o'clock the night before. That would have been the first thing on my list in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm the late night. I'm the one preparing at like 10 o'clock at night.
So Andrea would have been doing that as soon as she got up, and she wouldn't have been able to focus on anything else for the rest of the day. Whereas I'm thinking, I know what I'm doing. I just need to pull it together.
Yeah.
And so 8 o'clock the night before, I'm thinking, all right, I need to do that for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Just those very different approaches. So even if we're setting up a room for an event, what Andrea focuses on first and what I focus on as being, this is the first thing we'll do to set up the space, will be completely different. We'll go for it completely differently. Yeah. So just being aware of that. And now we both sort of go off and do our own things, and then when it's sort of half done, we say, right, what else needs doing?
Yeah.
So it's just noticing that and not getting hooked into, what you do, we should be doing this first.
That's it. And realizing you're both so different, and it's great to be different. And even though we do have so similar personalities in our relationship, I do, my wife, she is so different to me in what she likes and what she enjoys, and that's fine. And if my agenda comes up from my father or that side where it's kind of some narcissism or control or anything like that, it's just inner work for us to do and realize that we can't control people. And a great thing was, I was listening, I can't remember who said it, but there was a lady who was talking about control, said the only thing you're controlling is yourself. You're not controlling anybody else but yourself. And that for me was a great way to look at control and understand you're only doing it to yourself, no one else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And looking into stuff like meditation ceremonies. So when both of you have some sacred space together, how does this influence your relationship? Because for me, when I have ceremonies with Gabrielle, and she does some singing, I do some singing, it completely sets a new frequency for our relationship to grow into new directions, so on and so forth. So what's the importance of having that time, that sacred space together? Why is that important?
Well, our sort of, I suppose our sacred time together is often walking, isn't it? We like walking, so that tends to be our because I will practice yoga and dance. Craig is qigong, so our practices are very different in how we Craig can sort of meditate in the moment, can't you? Whereas I need to set a space to do that. Craig can just do it playing music or whatever, can't you? So our practices are really, really different. But I guess the things that we do together, don't we? Where we're together, we probably don't have as much time together as maybe we would like. I think we do, because we both work often evenings and things like that, and our work just comes first. We often will say, or Craig will often pull me up and say, oh, we haven't seen each other for
it's that thing that because we do similar work, and we appreciate how much work goes in behind the scenes, which isn't always apparent, making things happen. Very conscious that we can both, because you allow the other the space to do whatever they need to do. If you're not careful, you're on that wheel 24/7.
Yeah.
And just being mindful that, hang on, we haven't had any time for ourselves for the last few days. We need to, day out, or go for a walk. Let's do something. Let's just turn everything off for a while.
Yeah.
But in terms of a joint practice, we don't have a joint practice as such in a formal way. Andrea has her practices, and she does those daily, and like I say, sets the space and sits down and has a meditation time or whatever. And I just tend to naturally, wherever I am, I can just sort of drop into that space and just be for a while. So I don't necessarily sit upright, and I can just sort of, wherever I am, I can just sort of close my eyes and just drop into that space. So my practices aren't quite as formalized, apart from when I'm doing the Qigong. I find that really helps me with that side of things.
And so
a little bit of treatment shares. I'm trying to get that in a little bit.
That should happen more than it does. Because that we're both, working in the holistic field. The sharing aspect, we don't really do that as much as we should. So again, there's a bit of that thing of slowing down. I think I'm slightly better at slowing down. You joke that I'm semi-retired at the moment, because I take
you need to rock it sometimes, don't you?
Yeah,
rock it up the bum sometimes.
So
it's a nice place to be.
I'll start with you, Craig. So looking for everyone out there who is struggling of going into relationships and they don't work, what's your advice for people who are going into a new relationship? Because you've had a long relationship and what you're doing works in your way. What's your advice for people? What are the main things you can think of to work on? And
I think that, going back to what we said initially, is being comfortable by yourself first. And I think if you're comfortable with who you are and what you want from life, then finding the right partner becomes easier.
Definitely.
And I went through that process of, when you're looking for a partner, it's sort of like, oh, maybe, and then you like say, I literally had the list, so I'd run through my list and go, oh, no, that's a no, that's a no, that's a no, oh, maybe not.
Did you have a tick list when you see Roger there? Just 1 second, just ticking these boxes.
Before I was doing this, I was life coaching, so it was all about planning and writing things down. I suppose like journaling sometimes helps. So, but I literally had a list of, there was about 12 items on it.
How many points did I take?
Well, it's really weird, because I know we're joking about it, but it was almost a perfect score. There was only one area, and that was a really minor area as well.
What was it?
Pets.
Oh, pets.
That's
pets. Yeah, because I love pets. Craig doesn't really particularly.
Well, it's not the pets or animals side of it. It's the responsibility that it's a bit.
Yeah.
So we have cats at the moment, but not dogs, and that would be a thing that.
And I would like a wolf dog.
To me, it's just that having a dog is a lot more. There's a lot more responsibility, and I see it as being a bit constraining or restrictive.
Yeah.
We had the camper van, we go off and do things, and there's another element to think about. Then you've got a dog. So that was it for me, and that was on my list as no pets.
Yeah.
But I already had a dog at that point.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Eric, Border Collie, and Oliver, our cat, didn't we? So.
Yeah, and it's I do like animals, and I used to take Eric for walks and everything else. So it's not that thing, but it was just I didn't want that extra tie thing. I wanted I saw it as a bit.
And it's great you say that, Craig, because when you're looking for someone listening now who's looking for a relationship, you've got to find the person that you want to co-create with. And even having a list, that's a great idea for you to make sure you go into it with all the the right knowledge and take your time with it. So you're not forced into the relationship and you end up being with someone and you're very unhappy years later and you're like, why did I start this relationship? So it's great that you're actually using the genius side of you to go, right, I need this, these are the qualities I want in my relationship, and the universe is going to help me find them. And it has helped you find
it was things like, even like I had on there, you know, spiritual was the word. It was just single words, and I even had yoga question mark, because at that point I wasn't into really yoga and the energy work and sound healing. I was a life coach at the time and probably still quite in my rational, logical mind. So I had this thing, there was a yoga and question mark was on there. So somebody who did yoga maybe, and I don't really know why. I can't think why that was on the list, but it was there. And, you know, and Andrea was a yoga teacher. And so I was very specific about the characteristics or the lifestyle that the person had. I had on there, like not a big drinker, because you know, that was one thing.
That was on my list as well.
So, you know,
the lists are coming out now. You there, get it from your back pocket.
Watchers, like that was mine. Like my list was so like extra, because I had a list as well, and my list was so extensive that, I mean, actually there wasn't much left really, was there? So, Craig ticked all my boxes as well, actually.
Beautiful. And so you, Andrea, for people listening, so can you think of anything else we can share to help them?
Yeah, definitely. Quite a few things I suppose that I learned was so after my last relationship, which was very toxic and very controlling, I started researching relationship and dating. So I actually did a lot of watching YouTube videos about relationships and what relationships are about and how they should be. And I don't think we are educated in relationship at all. We have no education in looking for somebody that is going to have similar values to you. You know, and all of these things are really important. So I think, you know, just taking the time, I know like how there's that physical attraction, but behind that also, you know, does this person, you know, I read a really good book that is really good for people looking at relationship, called The Mastery of Love. And this is a great book that says, and he talks about in the book about why buy a cat when you want a dog. And it was that thing of, you know, if on my list I don't want somebody that drinks or smokes, or, you know, somebody that like watches EastEnders or whatever, then why would I then date them? So because you're going into an you know, you're putting yourself emotionally, investing yourself into something that is probably not going to work, because you've got a lot, you know, you're a dog and you're going out with a cat sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? That if we take a little bit more time, because we rush, and this is the other thing, is rushing into relationships very fast. And that's been my mistake, and that's been quite a mistake for me in the past, that I've rushed into things, got emotionally invested, and then 6-12 months down the line, you're like, oh, bloody hell, what have I done? Why is this not working? But actually, if I'd have thought about it at the beginning, you know, I've gone out with somebody that's very controlling, that, you know, if I'd have given that little bit of time to date for a longer time, then maybe I would have known that person. And I think there is a lot of that about not rushing. Don't rush. You know, that old way of dating somebody for a period of time, like they used to do, getting to know somebody. You know, it takes 10 months for a man to show his true colours. 10 months, it's quite, 10 weeks, it's quite a long time, 10 weeks, for a man to actually show his true colours. So if you And the other thing is around having sex. I'm just going to bring this in because also men and women are very different in that way, that when a woman has sex with a man, she emotionally invests in him. A man doesn't emotionally invest until after 10 weeks. So often, if there is that physical attraction and you have sex, often the man may well just lose interest because they've already got what they want. And really men, I think men generally do like a little bit of a chase. And if you're there like giving everything, like as a woman we're giving everything of ourselves, then there's no, you know, I'm sure that that time is quite important, that there is that little bit of time to get to know each other. And
separating the lust, isn't it? There's a lot of people get driven by lust. When
that is a generalisation, yes.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
I was going to say, it is a generalisation about, you know, about the men and sex thing as well. Because for me, it is an emotional thing.
Yeah. So not all men are like that.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. I would say, yeah.
But from spending time with men, I think you would say that is quite a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It is definitely a thing. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
And we're seeing that it all like corresponds with the divine feminine, the planet, how the true divine feminine is on one side, and what the kind of world we interact with is kind of like a false, perverted feminine energy where it's everything's all about having sex and the lust for the man, getting a release, and kind of seeing women as object, because that's what majority of the projections of the planet at the moment is, seeing women as objects. And moving past that lust point and understanding a lot of people make crazy choices through lust, not love, that they feel like they need someone and they want someone, but the lust is driving them to do it, and when they do have the release and they've done it, then that's it, and they just don't want to deal with it anymore, and that's a really shadowy side to themselves.
It's a chemical reaction, and it is around you know, our need to reproduce. So if we think about survival, so if we think about our real deep instincts like animals is to mate, you know, that is part of it. So if we have that real strong attraction to somebody, then, you know, often that pull is to mate. We want to recreate life. Which I guess in, you know, the caveman times was great to keep the species alive. But I think now, you know, my thing is actually, I think it is quite difficult for men and women to live together. I think it is I don't think it's an easy thing to live together, men and women, because I think, you know, tribally we wouldn't have done. Men would have been doing their thing and women would have been doing their thing. We would have been separate and we would have come together to mate. You know, that would have been how it is. And we've kind of domesticated ourselves in a way that we now cohabit together. And the other thing that's happened also is that a lot of the times men and women have also isolated themselves to be in a couple, so that the women maybe don't get any connection with women and men don't really get connection with men, and we need that. That is really important that we have that. So, you know, I think that is a big part of relationship as well, that sometimes we might think, you know, the relationship's going wrong, or it's, you know, but I think relationships are really difficult. It's not an easy journey that we take when we embark in relationship, because I think it is really, you know, against our instincts in a way to live together. You know,
and
it's
the more inner work you do on yourself, and the more self-forgiveness and more self-compassion, the daily practice of meditations, ceremonies, cacao ceremonies, whatever you're doing, or the sound journey, it's all about that process of becoming better. And once you fix more inside yourself, it reflects onto your partner as well. And sometimes when you go through really deep inner healings or inner knowings, you realize some part of your relationship's a bit out of balance, and you really need to nurture that and change it, because it's been so out of balance for ages, but you've not understood it until you've released some trauma from yourself.
Yeah, and I think also is that life is very busy. And I think that's another thing, you know, and I think actually there's been I've heard a lot of people have broken up through this time of lockdown, because I think that because our lives are very, very busy, often we don't look at the relationship. We don't look at where that is at now. And if you've got two people that are growing in very different ways, and then they're very busy, there's no kind of observation of where are we at now? You know, where are we both at now? Are we still together on this path, or have we gone in separate directions? And I think while we're busy, we're not looking at that. I mean, I think people that are maybe more on a spiritual path will probably have that more awareness of it. But I think quite often now, this time of being still and looking at each other and going, you know, are we still resonating on the same wavelength? Are we still, you know, together on this journey? You know, because I think that busyness is quite a thing. I think it is quite a thing that very easily distracts us from what is going on. What is our soul saying? Is this partner still my soulmate, or is this now time that this isn't resonating anymore? And acknowledging that as well, that it's okay. We don't have to stay in relationships forever. You know, we can from a place of love say, maybe this isn't right for each other anymore, rather than being in fear of, oh my God, what happens if I voice this? You know, there's got to be that level of truth that we honour within ourselves, because we can waste many years staying in relationships that are not working for us, and waste a lot of our lives there, you know, as well, just because of fear.
That's it, separating honesty and being truthful with yourself and path, and separating the need for someone, or the I can't do it without you. And the more the better relationships work better when you release that side of yourself, where the needy side, or say if I'm not with you, I can still interact with you, I can have a night away from you and sleep and not be messaging you every 5 seconds. So realizing that boundary and parts of yourself, which even for me come up in my relationship, where I do need to fix and move them and understand them and change them. It's just the ever evolving dance of learning, forgiving, self-work and self-discipline.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so going on now to intimacy, and why is intimacy important in relationships? Craig, we'll start with you.
My view on intimacy is it's very different. I know we've talked about the sex side of things, so intimacy for me is very different than that. It's that spending time together, and it's more of an emotional bond to me than physical. And it's about that being able to be vulnerable as well with each other, and being able to sit down and discuss things and be vulnerable and offer up and say, well, this is what's going on for me, even if it's something that makes you go, you should have a share in that, or where's this going to take us, or so if the relationship's right, you can put those things on the table and look at them. And sometimes it may take a process, there may be a day or two till both sides are comfortable with it, but intimacy is around that for me.
And looking on to like even having sex or anything like that, a lot of people kind of stop themselves from experiencing full intimacy. Then you can look into like the tantra teachings, or the awareness that a lot of men seem to are obsessed with penetration instead of their full body and energy connecting, auras connecting, and them having a different orgasm. Like for a majority of men, it's all about the penetration, and they'll never have a full orgasm in their life. But until you realize, like you say, of respecting and really going into the flow with them and sharing your aura as well, there's a totally different way and realms into sexuality, because we are sexual beings. That's who we are. Even though loads of shame and blame comes up for people, we are sexuality beings. It's important to explore into that. So Andrea, what's your thoughts on sex and intimacy and why it's important in relationships?
I mean, well, I guess for me, I suppose I'm going to talk a little bit more around aging and sex, really, for me, because that's been quite a big thing around menopause. So I've gone through menopause. I lost my mum 4 years ago and went straight into menopause at that point. So my sex drive has taken a dive from that. And I suppose one of the main things for me, which I, totally love, is that I can own that and say to Craig, my sex drive is just not quite as high as it was.
Yeah.
And he can accept that. And that to me is like intimacy to the max, that I can actually own that and say, that's how I am at the moment, this is how things are.
Yeah.
That'd be okay, that'd be all right, because Craig's sex drive is higher than mine at the moment, and it is what it is. But we love, I love cuddles, we kiss, we share verbally what we feel for each other. To me, that is a lot, it's quite a big thing for us to do that, and that to me helps me feel close. If sex isn't happening particularly that week or whatever, that we can still feel, and because I think sex we also used as reassurance often. And the other thing is that I think from a woman's point of view as well, is that sex, again, when we go back to producing children, and ovulation and bleeding and all of that cycle, when all of that stops, when we get into our crone years, well, we wouldn't particularly want sex a lot, because so from I suppose from a evolutionary, thank you, Craig, evolutionary perspective also, for me it's just been so profound that I've been able to say that this is what's happening to my body, this is how I feel, and it's okay, it's accepted, and it's okay. And Craig is so brilliant at making it feel okay. Like, I don't think, oh, Craig's just going to go off and find someone else. Kind of don't feel that at all. We have I think a relationship that is very trusting, isn't it? And that it's okay, it's okay. And that to me is massive, because like we've said, many men, it's about penetration, it's about getting that fulfillment, and no matter what happens, that should happen, and women are seen as objects for that.
And that's endurance, isn't it?
That we cuddle up, or and that's enough. That's enough. And then we have sex as well, and that's totally, so it's, I think it's again, it's interesting to see also how, like, the seasons affect, and the cycles affect, the moon cycle effect, and how we feel different at different stages in our lives as well. And for a man to honour that is quite an amazing thing, and a gift, if you have that.
Beautiful. And that just shows, I think
that we, also to feel that you deserve it as well. You deserve that man to honour that in you as well,
Beautiful. And that's why I had you both on, because you're doing so well on your journeys, and to have your perspective, because a lot of people out there are really wanting relationships, and they do want that intimacy for someone to share their life with, and themselves are just stopping themselves from experiencing that.
Yeah. And it's not all about sex.
Yeah, it's not
all about sex. In fact, sex is quite a small part, really, is it? Oh, maybe not the but yeah, it's a part of it. It's a part of it. It's not the whole of it. It's so much more than that. There's so much more than that, I think, that goes on with it. And for me, I think one of the most important things is expression. It's about expressing how you feel.
Yeah.
And feeling safe to do that. And if you feel safe for somebody to express how you feel, then you're in a good relationship, I think.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so, thank you both for coming on the show. We've just gone over the hour now. So, can you just explain a little bit about what's going on in the future events for you? So starting with Andrea, what's happening on your end?
Yeah, so I'm moving into, so from October, I'm moving into training. So my work is now evolving into, I think I'm going into my crone years of woman of wisdom. So so I will be starting to share my knowledge in trainings, so yoga trainings, cacao trainings, goddess trainings, spirit dance trainings, loads of different stuff. So I guess my creative energy in my crone years. So this is again another thing, just very quickly, around menopause, is that when we go into menopause and we're not bleeding every month, then our creative energy can really establish itself. So yeah, I'm going into my creative phase now of creating lovely trainings for people, and carrying on with dancing and stuff.
Yeah. I need to come to a dance. Keep saying.
You definitely do. Yeah.
The kids will probably have to join because yeah, brilliant.
Dance. Yeah, definitely.
I need to do it. I'll sort it out today. I'll have a look at what day I can do it, and I'll arrange it, because
I'll send you the link. I'll send you the link.
Thank you. And Craig, so what have you got coming up, brother?
Yeah, well, again, training, because of the situation with lockdown and all the events were sort of cancelled. The training courses is what sort of kept me ticking over, but I've been able to focus on those a lot more. And one of the things I do with the training course as well is really work on it being a personal journey. So that's taken me back in a way to the coaching. I mentioned before that I used to do live coaching, and throughout lockdown I've picked up a few coaching clients online. But I found, because of the work that I've done in the holistic field, I can hold space for people much more powerfully. So the coaching sessions have become more powerful. Yeah. So in the future, that's going to be another part of the offering, is to do more coaching work as well. Yeah. And then just hopefully start to gradually get back now to live events and sound baths, and because that's a massive part of the thing for me, that human connection and making meaningful and positive connections.
Yeah. It was very bizarre, you know, just the whole environment of being out there with people in the room and talking, and like all that process was so weird, and it's just nice to get back to it, normality.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been nice. It's been nice, and yeah, we've enjoyed it as well.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate you both for coming on. I really do, and we'll have to have you both on at some point in the future, because I really do enjoy talking to you both. So
it's great. We love it, don't we?
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, Andrea and Craig. Bless you both. And thank you, everyone, for watching this week's show. If you like what you see and hear, then please subscribe and comment. I appreciate your feedback. So have a great weekend, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.
All right, cheers.
Thank you,
Bye.
Dale. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.